In the last unit we looked at how to create ceiling elements in Revit. Now I want to concentrate on adding fixtures to those ceiling elements. So for example, quite typically you'll want to add light fittings, maybe sprinklers, PIR detectors, CCTV cameras. So I'm going to use light fittings as an example in this unit. So I'm going to work with the model that we previously created. So here are our suspended ceilings. I'm looking up at the model in a ceiling plan view from the ground floor. The first thing we need to do, if we haven't got any ceiling fixtures in our current project, is to load them in. So I'm going to go to the Insert menu, Load Family, and this is where we can bring components in that are currently external to our project. So Load Family. Revit's configured by default to look at your standard library. In this case mine is the UK metric library. I'm going to go down to Lighting, go to Architectural, Internal, and in here I've got a range of lighting elements. Note, not all of these will be ceiling hosted. I need to find one that is, so I'm going to go down here and find that one, which I know is hosted by ceilings. So it's this Troffer Parabolic Rectangular. Notice the .rfa, this is a standalone Revit family, separate component. I'm going to bring that into my model. Okay, so we've loaded a ceiling fixture into our project, but it's not yet in our model, so that's what we're going to do now. So if we go to Architecture and Component, we can see that the current component is the latest one, which we've just loaded in, which is our light fitting. Make sure you're in a ceiling plan view, so you're actually looking at the ceiling. You can see where you're actually going to place this fixture. We hover over the model and a single click to place our light fitting. Now at this stage, don't worry about the light fittings orientation or alignment. I'm going to show you how to adjust that next. For now, let's just place an instance of the light fitting component onto our ceiling. Okay, so we now have a ceiling fixture in our model and placed on our ceiling. Next thing we need to do is rotate it to the correct orientation and then align it with the ceiling grid itself. So I'm just going to select the element. I'm going to use the rotate command. By default, the center of rotation is in the center of the object, so that's fine. Click a start angle, drag it round, it'll snap to 90 degrees. Click an end angle. So now the lighting fixture is in the correct orientation. We just need to align it. You can use that align tool. Click on a ceiling grid line. That's what we want to align to. And now click on the edge of the fixture. That's what we want to align. We don't need to use the padlock in this particular scenario, because if we realign the model hatch pattern, i.e. the ceiling grid, the light fixture will follow automatically, so we don't need to padlock it. So I've done it in the long direction, let's do it in the short direction on the fixture. So align tool still selected, select that ceiling grid line, and we want to align the edge of the light fitting. Again, we don't need to padlock it in this particular scenario. That's because any objects that are ceiling hosted that sit on the surface of the ceiling will automatically move if the surface of the ceiling moves, so we don't have to manually constrain that fixture to individual lines. I'll show you how that works in a second. Okay, so we've got one light fitting sitting on our ceiling in the correct orientation and aligned nicely with the ceiling grid. Let's go and create the rest of our layout, and to do so what we need to do is select the fitting. You can use the copy command. Again, I'll be going through the copy command in a lot more detail later on, but for now let's select multiple, so we can pop down multiple instances of our selected object, and all we need to do is make sure we snap to the corner, and now we can go and place our light fittings where they need to be. You can tell I'm not a lighting engineer, but you'll probably end up with some sort of lighting layout like this. A grid of light fittings. So there's all our light fittings neatly aligned on the ceiling grid. If I go back to our floor plan and I very quickly put a camera view in the corner of that room, you can actually see the light fittings in place in the ceiling. And if I produce a quick section through that ceiling and the light fittings, just want to show you there's the ceiling, there's a light fitting, and you can actually see that the way this particular light fitting component has been modelled, the way the family's been constructed, it actually cuts a void into the ceiling itself. So as it hosts itself onto the ceiling, it cuts out a void, which is really useful because obviously that's accurate as you would actually build it, but it also means if you schedule the areas and quantities of that ceiling material, it's going to be an accurate estimate of the actual area involved, because it's going to remove those particular areas of ceiling where the light fittings are. So I'm just going to go back to our ceiling plan, and I mentioned before about the fact that you didn't need to padlock those. Remember when I rotated and aligned a light fitting and we had the option to padlock to a grid line? Just want to show you that that does in fact work without the use of the padlock. So let's say, for example, we've set this out, but we now realize that we've got a sliver of tile down this one side of the room, and we would in fact like the ceiling layout to start with a whole tile here. So let's go ahead and realign the suspended ceiling, i.e. the model hatch pattern that forms this ceiling grid. You'll recall how we did that with the use of the Align tool. Make sure you're on Modify, Align, select what we want to align to, which is the edge of the room, the face of the wall, and what we want to actually realign, which is this suspended grid line here. And you'll notice how the model hatch pattern moved across to become aligned, and it also brought with it all the ceiling fixtures. That double line you can see there is just the section line over the top. But we didn't need to padlock the light fittings in place. They moved automatically when we realigned the ceiling. And that completes this unit. To get the most out of this training material, please take the complete course online at bimscape.com. Here you will find a complete learning management system that allows you to work through the course at your own pace. Comprehensive written tutorials provide additional information to that found in the training videos. Mark each unit as complete as you finish it and move on to the next. At any point you can return to any of the units you have previously completed to go over the material again. If you'd like to take this course online, please visit www.bimscape.com/Revit for details.